Hi, and welcome to this edition of In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric, Executive Director. Thank you very much for joining me on this edition of In Focus. Looking forward to a very interesting conversation. First, I want to remind you we are still in election season. We're not done yet. It seems like it's gone on for a period of time, but there is still time for you to vote if you have not done that. Absentee in-person voting, which started at the voter registration office on April 9th, continues to May 6th, Mondays from 8:30 to 5, and then Tuesday through Friday, this being one of the last weeks of that. But again, next Monday, you being able to be involved in that, 8:30 to 4:30. And Saturday, we'll give you another opportunity, and this is at the voter registration office in the Wayne County Courthouse, Saturday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. The vote centers will continue to be open tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. at 4 locations: the First Bank Center, First English Lutheran Church, Hagerstown New Testament Church, and Golay Center. And also the First Bank Center will be open on Saturday, again from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then obviously we are coming up on Election Day, Tuesday, May 7th. There will be 8 locations around Wayne County for you to vote in these contested races: First Bank Center, First English Lutheran Church, the Golay Center, Mount Olive Baptist Church, Life Spring North, First Baptist Church, and Centerville Christian Church. And we invite you to join us for our live election coverage coming up Tuesday evening, May 7th. We will start at 6 p.m. We will again be broadcasting live from the lobby of Whitewater Hall on the campus of Indiana University East. We try to have conversation with candidates who ran uncontested, so they were not in a contested primary. You didn't have a chance to see or hear from them. We'll have a chance to speak to some of them that evening. And we also try to have a conversation about something in the community. I'm going to be joined by Jeff Carter, sitting in as a board member for the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce. That gives me a chance to talk to him a little bit about Bethany Theological Seminary, and we'll also talk to Dr. Karen Clark from Indiana University East. That night, the nurses' pinning ceremony is going to be happening in Vivian Auditorium. The following night, there is commencement for Purdue Polytechnic, and then that Saturday, there is commencement for Ivy Tech. So we're going to talk a little bit of education along with the election that evening. So I hope you're able to join us on WGTV Channel 11 beginning at 6 p.m. I want to thank my guest for joining me today, Sayward Salazar, who is with Volunteers of America, Ohio and Indiana. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to do it. Let's start with, because some people I know, I was not familiar with the name Volunteers of America. And when you told me just before we went on the air that this organization has a 100+ year history, I went, really?
Yeah.
Bring us up to speed a little bit on this.
Yeah, so Volunteers of America is a national nonprofit organization. And under that national nonprofit, we have smaller organizations. So you've got VOA, OHIN, there's, Michigan, Mid-States, Massachusetts, all over the country are VOA affiliates, but we're all under the bigger umbrella. VOA was created in the 1800s, late 1800s. It was part of the movement towards trying to pull people out of poverty, help people provide some services, because at that time, there were no social services, really. There was no food stamps, Medicaid. A lot of that stuff didn't exist.
Some people would say that's a good thing.
Some people might say that's a good thing until you saw the way that people lived and the fact that young children were dying because they didn't have health care or food because there was no one to be able to support them. So organizations like VOA and actually Salvation Army and the YMCA were all very early in coming into this work and helping people who were in poverty or who were disabled to be able to have a better quality of life. And actually VOA was created from the same family as Salvation Army. So they had a little bit different view on how things were going to be done, and so the families branched off and they each created their own social service organization.
Talk a little bit about your role with this organization and how long you've been there.
Sure. I am the Vice President of Behavioral Health Operations, and I've been with VOA for over 5 years now. I started as the Program Director in our location in Winchester, just about 30 minutes north of here, and then moved into a Senior Director of Operations role, and then from there became the Vice President.
I had a chance to, obviously before this conversation, look a little bit at your website, and I always go to kind of what we do.
Sure.
And when that opened up, I went, wow, because underneath it says veterans, mental health and recovery, criminal justice and reentry, housing. Talk a little bit about, just real briefly, a couple of those areas and what you all try to accomplish within that.
Sure. VOA's mission really is to go wherever we're needed and do whatever comes to hand. And so we're always looking for areas where maybe the service isn't being provided or we think that they need enhanced services. So VOA often serves a population of people that other organizations maybe aren't as comfortable serving or just haven't served. So we have veteran services both in Ohio and Indiana. We do a lot of work with homeless veteran populations, so trying to get them housed, jobs. I just came back from Gary, Indiana, where our veterans program works very closely with their veterans court. So as court hearings are happening, it's a problem-solving court. Our staff are there to support the veterans and be able to say, hey, if you need a job, we can help you find a job. If you need housing, we can help you find housing. And we have housing complexes in Indiana and Ohio that house veterans. So,
wow.
And we recently opened one in northern Indiana specifically for women veterans. So we're really focused on trying to find a population that needs that service. We have reentry services both in Ohio and Indiana, and those are a lot of work release folks, people who are coming out of jail and prison and need to get back on their feet, start working and be able to work through some programs, get some social services, some treatment, substance use treatment, and really working with that population. And when you're ready, I can talk about my programs. But there's one thing I do want to make sure everyone knows is that VOA is also supported by our thrift stores in Ohio. So much like Goodwill and Salvation Army, a lot of our programs, they need that additional funding, and our thrift stores help support that funding. And so we have several thrift stores in Ohio, and there's a VOA OHIN eBay site.
Wow.
Yes, so you can find all kinds of wonderful things on eBay, and while you're shopping, you're supporting the services for veterans, people with mental health and reentry programs.
Talk a little bit about what you specifically do and the area specifically that you focus on. And I appreciate the background on that, again, because it was not an organization that I'm familiar with. I'm sure a number of people are, but it's not one that maybe has touched a number of people in the community. So thank you for the background.
Yeah, and it can be confusing. People are, Volunteers of America, they're like, oh, you find volunteers. I'm like, no, we get paid. In the 1800s, the word volunteer meant someone who works towards a mission. And so the word has changed a little bit over the years. So no, we work for VOA and we do get paid. It is a paid program. So I work for predominantly in Indiana over their behavioral health programs. So in Indiana, our biggest focus has been on pregnant women with substance use disorder. In 2015, VOA partnered with Department of Child Services, and we opened our first residential substance use facility that allowed pregnant women to come into our program and allowed women to bring their children into their program with them. So that meant that if a mom needed some long-term substance use treatment, residential treatment, so that's in a secure setting, they're living there, getting all of their treatment services there, a lot of women really struggled to leave their children at home, and they wanted to be able to say goodnight to them every night, read them a story, do all of those things that mothers love to do. So we created a program that allowed that relationship to continue and that bond to be strengthened by, having them with them during their recovery period. After that one was really successful, that was in Indianapolis, downtown Indianapolis. That was our first program. Then the second one was opened in Winchester in 2018. In Winchester, the building was part of the Wings program, and so we were able to get the building at a price that was very reasonable for us, knowing that there would be a payment off at the end. We just paid that off, so we now officially own the building in Winchester. And so we've been up there since 2018. In 2019, we opened another location in Evansville, and in 2020, we opened a location in Columbus. So,
talk a little bit about what that program looks like, because I'm sure there are people who are concerned
Sure.
about children around substance use recovery.
Sure.
And people with those problems. Talk a little bit about what that looks like and how the children are or can be insulated from some of that.
Yeah. So all of our programs are set up in 2 different phases. So our first phase is your traditional rehab. It's 30 days, give or take, depending on, how engaged you are in treatment. And so they do their groups all day, every day. They're not leaving the building unaccompanied at all. They're doing their therapy, their case management. We drug screen our clients twice a week randomly, so we're always making sure that they're free of substances. And if they have their children with them while they're in group and they're doing their therapy and their case management sessions, we have a child watch room. So we have caring staff that will watch after their children, so they can kind of be in group and not have to worry about what they're saying or if a kid is hearing it or any of those things. So it really allows them to focus on themselves during that group time and know that their kids are in a safe environment being cared for in the building.
Have you all seen that those mothers being able to leave that group and reconnect with their kids has been a positive for them and a positive for the kids because they don't have that separation?
Absolutely. Our number one goal is really to prevent any separation of mom and children, specifically during that really fragile, the first few months. We want moms to be able to bond with their infants because that lack of bonding can create issues farther along in their lives. So we want to make sure that they have that contact with their infant and they're able to care for their infant in a supportive environment. A lot of women, when they come home with a new baby, they have family or they have friends that are there to support them. A lot of our clients don't have family and friends that can support them. So when they come to our facilities, we're their support for them. If the baby won't sleep in the middle of the night, our staff will hold the baby for them so they can get some sleep. We're there to be that support for them. We're there to provide support for lactation services or making sure that their physical health needs are being taken care of and their mental health needs. So we really try to wrap around our clients while they're in our program with us.
Talk a little bit about, if you would, if you all deal with it, and I think you do because I saw that you all are getting a grant. Infant mortality rates are high in Indiana, and that may be an understatement depending on who's doing that look at. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about where you all are in trying to tackle or help that problem.
So VOA received a $2.8 million grant from the Anthem Foundation. And the purpose of the grant is to focus on a couple of different areas. C-section rates, low birth weight, substance use, and lactation, doula services, smoking cessation. So really trying to look at the things that may be, potentially leading to some of the issues that, moms and children are having in the state of Indiana and trying to wrap around them so that they are getting the support during that period of time. So the program that we're rolling out and have created, it adds bookends onto the current program we already have. So we have residential and we do have some aftercare, but this enhances our aftercare services and it also provides for screening of all pregnant women with a substance use disorder before they come to us. So we're trying to roll out this prenatal universal screening so that we can catch them earlier and provide that treatment for them while they're pregnant, and so that while they have their baby, they're already in recovery. We want to use an assessment called the 4Ps Plus. It's a substance use assessment that is specifically for pregnant women, and it is the only one that is reliable and valid. And so we're working.
What do you mean it's the only? Hold it. What do you mean it's the only one that's reliable and valid?
It is the only one that has any research, it's been tested, that it actually shows whether someone will have a substance use problem. There's a lot of tests out there. There's a lot of screenings out there. But the way that this one has been created, it's to start a conversation with our clients, and so that they don't feel stigmatized by the end of the conversation to say, yeah, I am drinking alcohol and I am pregnant. And then we can offer them help. And so it's been across the country. It's been used quite a few different places. California has used it. It's been used on Indian reservations quite a bit, and had a lot of success in being able to screen and identify women who need treatment early in their pregnancy. So we're able to get them into treatment. If they need medicated assisted treatment like Suboxone, Subutex, Methadone, we're able to get that on started before they're later in their pregnancy.
Talk about what keeps people from looking for help, from coming to an organization like yours. I know you've mentioned the word stigma a number of different times.
Yeah.
And I've noticed through the years, and I had this conversation with somebody a few years ago, the difference in the terminology of substance abuse and substance misuse. If you could talk about even how it is talked about now, as opposed to even a decade ago or less.
Yeah, it's talked about very differently. I mean, I still think that women with substance use disorder who are pregnant and have children receive more stigma than anyone. Ball State's done some research on how women who have substance use disorder are treated in the OB delivery rooms, because there's people don't really understand, how could you use this drug and hurt your baby? It doesn't make sense. And the piece that people don't understand is how much of a sickness and illness this is, and how it really just hijacks every part of your brain. And women will be crying and saying, like, I don't want to do this, but I can't stop this drug. I know that I'm pregnant. I know that I shouldn't be doing this, but I can't stop. And there's a lot of stigma when they walk into a doctor's office. And so I think a lot of women are very nervous to admit, yes, I've been drinking alcohol. Yes, I've been, using meth or other substances while I'm pregnant, because they're not sure how that's going to be received. And they're scared that their babies are going to be taken away. So our program really focuses on, making sure that moms know when they come to us that they don't, we don't treat them with that stigma, and we make sure that, they're respected, and they have, every person has inherent worth and dignity. And regardless of the choices you've made in life, we're going to wrap around you and make sure that you, all of that, we care about you, is basically what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
And the language has changed a lot. It used to be a dirty screen. Well, that makes it seem like people are dirty. Mm-hmm. And so it's a positive drug screen instead of a dirty screen. So a lot of those language pieces, it means a lot. And so we are really trying to shift that in a different direction to make sure that we're using, language that is compassionate and understanding, with empathy, knowing that this is a struggle for people. It's not something that people sign up for or choose to do.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're having a chance to have a conversation with Sayward Salazar, who is with Volunteers of America, Ohio and Indiana. As you look at aftercare,
yes,
which is an important piece of this, because you can get somebody through a program and then a year later they're back where they were.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what your aftercare looks like, and whether you can talk about success rates, things of that nature?
Yeah, so our aftercare plan, we do a home visiting model, or some people might, call it case management. So we follow up with our clients after they've been discharged, if they meet certain criteria. The nice thing about this Anthem grant is most of the women that are in our program will qualify to be able to get, we call them family coaches. So they'll be able to qualify to get a family coach. They'll be able to go into their home, check in on them, see how they're doing, making sure they're making it to their appointments. If they're starting to feel like maybe I want to use again, it's very easy then for us to get them back into that residential program, because we already have a connection with them. And the really great thing about this Anthem grant is it's not for people who have Anthem insurance. It's for anyone in the state of Indiana that needs this service. So we're able to provide that for anyone who needs it, regardless of who their insurance provider is. So that's been a really great opportunity for us to be able to do this. The other piece that's really important is we've had some women, unfortunately, that had some health problems after delivery. And most women don't see their provider until 6 weeks after they've delivered their baby. A lot can happen in that period of time. So we've added some nurses to our staff. So that's brand new for us. So our nurses will be able to go take vitals and visit women in the home and make sure that, they're feeling okay, or if there's any red flags, high blood pressure, things like that, that there is a medical person that will be able to connect them to a higher level of care if needed.
What don't we, the general public, understand about abuse and what we put people through when they're going through really what I think is a medical issue?
Yeah. There was a time when it was, cut people off. If we say we're not going to talk to them, if we don't let them in the house, if we, push them away, then they'll come out of their addiction and come back home because they're going to miss us so much that they're going to want to be there. So there's very much like this, we have to separate people. There's been a huge shift now, and really the opposite of addiction is recovery, right? That's what, or the opposite of addiction is connection. And so understanding that it's the connection, people knowing that they're loved and supported, people knowing, that when you're ready for treatment, we'll be here for you. We'll be able to support you. I mean, I think that is a huge shift that we're making now where, I always, this is something I always think about is, when people go to the hospital, we send them flowers.
Sure.
When people go to substance use treatment, they don't get flowers. They don't get cards. They don't get, good luck. They get nothing. Right. And so we really, although most people see it as a disease, they don't really see it as a disease in a lot of ways because we are still very punitive in how we treat people when they're trying to get through recovery.
We've got a couple of minutes left. I want to give you the floor because I could ask probably a lot of questions that don't necessarily make a difference.
Yeah.
Talk to our audience for a couple of minutes about what you feel like in this last couple of, we need to know, we need to hear, that we need to understand.
I think that something that we as a community need to understand is that when we lift people up, when we give them a purpose, they become a better member of our community. And I think a lot of negative attention is brought about, and we see a lot of negative comments about people who are in recovery or who are struggling. And I really think as a community, if we can make that shift away from, the negative language and the negative talk and really focus on what can we do to uplift this person? How can we support them? How can we make sure they have housing when they leave treatment? What about a job? Okay, you've got 3 felonies. You've got some possession charges. Who's going to hire you? And really start to look at ourselves as a community and question, have we created a place where people in recovery will be successful? Or have we created a place that still has a lot of stigma and we still need to work through a lot of that? And I think there's some great things happening in the community, but I really do think we could do a lot more to really uplift people and give them that purpose so when they are in recovery and they come back to our community, that they feel like they belong here and they don't feel ostracized. And the more that people talk about it too, there's a lot of prominent members in our community that share that they're in recovery and share what their story was like. And I think that's important for people to hear because recovery is possible. And, we need to support people through that period of time.
Will you come back and talk to us again?
Absolutely, because I didn't even talk about our program for men in Indianapolis.
All right. Then we are going to have you back in the not too distant future. Trust me.
Sounds like a plan.
Sayward Salazar with Volunteers of America, thank you very much for the time. Thank you for the work that you and the organization are doing. Looking forward to finding out more of what you all are doing and what you're doing in particular with this group.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. We'll be back with more In Focus in just a couple of minutes.
Something that I think was ingrained in me growing up is that every person has value. But because of the stigma, they can't be honest about their lives and what's happened to them. Since 2002, I've been in the field of mental health. And when you are working in mental health, you are also working with addictions. You cannot silo yourself one or the other because there's always going to be a crossover. The area of the state that I work in is very rural. So we really serve a wide range of women, all ages, all levels of pregnancy. I believe for women and mothers, one of the biggest barriers is not being with their children. We can get them established with a provider. We can get them on some medicated assisted treatment if needed and make sure that that baby is healthy when baby's born. We're helping moms breastfeed. We're helping them with babies in the middle of the night. You know, these are the things that we're doing because somebody did them for us. If you need me to sit with you while you cry, I'll sit with you while you cry. If you need me to hold your baby so you can take a shower because you haven't showered in 2 days, like, let me hold your baby, let me be there for you, and we're in this together. We get to see people at their worst, but we also have the privilege of seeing people at their best. Having, I think, clients say to us, nobody cared about me before. You guys care about me, and it becomes very personal for us. You know, I think a lot of women get the message of we have to do all. We have to be the perfect wife. We have to be the perfect mother. We have to have the career. And so there's all of this pressure put on us. And so when we fall down, sometimes we fall hard. One of the biggest misunderstandings of addiction is if we take everything important away from you, you will stop. And you can take all of that away, and that's just gonna make people worse. I haven't found a single person that has sat down and said, I want to do this for the rest of my life. We're punishing people with addiction and not always treating people with addiction. These are our friends and family. This is someone I went to high school with. This is my aunt, my child. Regardless of what they've done, we need to make sure that we're there for them when they're ready to come back and be part of this community. As communities, we need to be open to people who are in recovery, to put yourself in their shoes. Knowing what addiction is and how it functions and how it works will just help our overall community.
Know what's below. When planting flowers, a garden, or doing any type of digging on your property, RP&L wants you to call 811 before you dig. Electric, gas, water, sewer, cable lines, and more may be in your yard. Don't take the risk of digging blindly. It's free, only takes a few minutes, and can prevent inconvenient service outages, expensive repair bills, serious injury, or even death. That's why calling 811 before you dig is Indiana law. Know what's below.
Richmond Sanitary District curbside service in your neighborhood. Know the dings. Bag trash goes into your green rosy roller. Regular route drivers do not get out of their trucks to pick up bags and items left beside your green rosy roller. If you have larger items that do not fit in your green rosy roller, please call to schedule a special pickup, 765-983-7450. Clean, loose, unbagged recyclables go in your blue Ritchie roller. Plastic bottles and jugs, aluminum and steel cans, glass bottles and jars with lids removed. Newspaper, chipboard like cereal boxes and magazines should be placed on top of the blue Ritchie roller type. Corrugated cardboard has the wavy layers. It must be clean, no pizza grease, folded and broken down to slide easily out of the container when picked up to be emptied by the truck. Questions on the curbside containers? Please call Debbie Tevis at 765-983-7456. Richmond Sanitary District. Our goal is to grow.
The Levi and Catherine Coffin State Historic Site in Fountain City is open Wednesday through Sunday and some holidays. Enjoy a guided tour through the home of Quakers Levi and Catherine Coffin, where freedom seekers found refuge. Then see the site's interpretive center and learn more about the history of the Underground Railroad. Reservations for tours and special programs can be made online at www.indianamuseum.org or by calling the site at 765-847-1691.
Hi, I'm Tamara Brinkman, host of The Third Sector. Joining me for this month's episode, Katie Stephen from Communities in Schools and Ty Muldoon from Girls Inc.
In the media and ways that they can make their own messages. We also do financial literacy, so helping them to learn how to be independent financially.
You can find us Thursdays, 8:30 p.m., Channel 20, WETV.
I'm Lindsay Darnell with Richmond Rising. Join us this month as we speak to Richmond Mayor Ron Oler.
As the mayor of the city of Richmond, one of my goals is to get people to live and work here and make the city a better place to live and to work. And people have the option to live across the border in a neighboring state. And I would rather, if they're working here, live here and be engaged in the community, because when you live in the community, you become engaged in the community.
That's Richmond Rising, Monday evenings at 6:30 on WGTV Channel 11.
Welcome back to In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric, Executive Director of Whitewater Community Television. Thank you very much for staying with us. I also want to thank First Bank Richmond, who is sponsoring this particular program. And we just spoke with Amy Fouché. They will also be sponsoring some of our coverage of the 4-H Fair Queens pageant, as well as some of our coverage of the Wayne County 4-H Fair as we get to that week. So we appreciate their support with that. I have with me a First Bank Richmond employee, Matt Smith, who is really working to inform the community about fraud and cybersecurity, which is something that really seems to be rampant. As I look at social media, I'm surprised, sometimes shocked, that almost weekly I'm seeing something from a friend who says, don't follow me if you see that I'm asking for friend requests or something. We're already friends. I've been hacked. That I've been hacked thing is coming up a lot more these days. I assume you all are finding that a great deal too.
Yeah, we see that a lot of people are falling victim to scams, from anywhere from financial scams to identity theft scams. Anything that they could be a victim of is coming up.
Matt, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Provide us a little bit of background for those who may or may not know you, a little bit of background on yourself and how you got into the fraud and cybersecurity area.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Richmond most of my life, moved away for about 6 years to Nevada, became a law enforcement officer in Nevada, decided to move back for family, and was a Richmond police officer for approximately 9 years. Prior to that, prior to leaving Richmond, I worked for First Bank Richmond on the retail side as a branch manager. And the financial crimes aspect of it was always interesting to me. Once I got into law enforcement, I had the opportunity to do that a little bit. Mm-hmm. This position came open with First Bank Richmond, and I've always had that financial crimes idea and interest, so this seemed to be a perfect fit, and to be able to come back to First Bank Richmond and work this type of crime is really good for me.
Talk a little bit about kind of the evolution of what you have seen through the years in financial crime, because we've seen the evolution of social media. It was Facebook. Well, it was even something before Facebook. Mm-hmm. But then Facebook became the big one, and then TikTok and YouTube, and being able for people to easily put information about themselves and their family online, in essence, really to try to help family members away and friends away keep up with them. But those that are always looking to take what you have found it as a way to steal things. How have you seen this evolve?
What I've seen is the more information that people put online about themselves, where they live, where they work, family, who they're married to, who they may be in relationships with, their children, so on and so forth. These bad actors who want to scam people or just commit bad things in general will take this information and they'll connect those dots between who are family members, who are not family members, who do they have close relationships with, who do they interact with a lot, and then they will just work out this elaborate plan of who they can contact, who they can't. Maybe they'll try to contact some people by other means, by messenger, through messaging on TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, anything like that to get these people involved with them and start giving them information. Also, you could see these surveys that come out that talk about where did you grow up, what did you do, and maybe the people that are passing them on don't have nefarious intentions, but the people that are watching those, maybe the people that created them, are using those as research to do bad things with. And they can connect those dots and connect it with the people's information that they've put online. And a lot of people don't think about putting out where they first grew up, where they went to elementary, what their first dog's name was, which is all stuff that you see with identity theft. Things coming up, questions that you're going to ask for authentication when you log into accounts.
Those security questions that they want to know.
Yeah.
So let's talk there. Talk about the type of information that you want to be careful sharing online. And you mentioned a couple of things, but are there a couple of things that really kind of help trigger these people to be able to steal your identity or use that information against you?
Yeah, you never want to put, your maiden name or your parents' maiden name. You never want to, of course, give out any passwords or where particularly you might bank at, that kind of stuff. They can take all that stuff and create these profiles and just start digging into you. You put online that I'm having an issue with my computer, my antivirus is not working so well, or my Microsoft operating system is not working so well, and they might see that and say, oh, well, maybe we could contact them as Microsoft and try to help them. And then it just snowballs into a larger scheme where they can lose their identity. They give them out their social security numbers, driver's license, that kind of stuff.
Does this tend to happen to a particular age group more often than another, or is across the board everybody just getting hit?
We're starting to see it across the board. There hasn't been, historically it's been sometimes the older generations that have been hit. They're a little bit more susceptible, maybe not quite as computer savvy. But as the generations who've grown up with computers grow older, they understand them, they know them. But it's happening across the board from teenagers all the way up through the older generations.
What's prompted First Bank Richmond? Because you can go to the First Bank Richmond website, firstbankrichmond.com/cybersecurity, without really being a customer of First Bank Richmond, and get tips on cybersecurity. Tell me what First Bank Richmond is seeing that they have opened up this type of safety, and I'll call it safety information, to the community at large, whether you are a customer or not.
Yeah, so we're seeing enough with our customers alerting us to things that they've gotten, information that's been sent to them. They'll just let us know if something seems a little odd. In my time at First Bank Richmond, I've seen that it's not just a First Bank Richmond problem. It is a community-wide problem. So in order to better serve our community, we want to get all this information out, and that way our community can combat the fraud and be better protected.
We say fraud, we say cybersecurity, we say identity theft. They kind of all match up a little bit, but what for you, somebody that is professionally involved in this, are there differences in those crimes that you watch out for and that you think people can watch out for?
Yeah, a lot of times when we talk fraud, it's they've had their debit card's been stolen. The debit card number has been stolen, not particularly the physical card, but when that's put into an online shop or something like that, we never quite know what the security parameters are of those sites, and if it's not vetted correctly, or it may seem maybe a little odd, and someone still proceeds, they'll still get sometimes that debit card number compromised. So we think of that as fraud. We think of checks being stolen or intercepted in the mail and washed. And it's not just individuals. It happens to businesses as well. But checks being counterfeited or washed or altered to pay somebody else rather than the intended recipient, those are what we think of as fraud. And we use that term sometimes interchangeably, but a lot of times with ID theft, we're looking at people who have unknowingly given out their social security numbers or unknowingly given out their personally identifying information to someone who has contacted them via social media means or email or even on the phone or by text message as well.
Are there things that, as we divide those things up, and we talked about debit card numbers, credit cards being stolen, talk about a couple of tips that people need to think about in terms of their plastic, how to secure, how to keep safe. I had an IT person once tell me I would never put my credit card number into a website because you're putting the full credit card number plus you're putting that 3-digit security code into a website. And we keep hearing it. A lot of websites for banks and various businesses continue to get hacked. When you think about the plastic, the thing that we use most, and a lot of people keep going, well, we keep going toward a cashless society. What are the first things that people need to think about in how to keep that physical plastic thing safe?
Well, I think first thing is to know that it's a website that you trust and that's verified. Going to a website that you've never seen before, or maybe you've seen it through social media means, and you click through that and you've never seen it before. Maybe it looks interesting. Maybe the product looks really cool, but then you go on and you put in your card number, you never get the item, and all of a sudden you start seeing these charges come through. So first thing would be to definitely only use sites that you absolutely trust or can verify that are secure websites. And you can do that in various ways through the browser. Other options are using the various digital wallets that are available, as far as using like Apple Pay or the Google Wallet. You could use those. A lot of times, especially with Apple, you can have that number changed every time, and it's a digital number that masks your actual card number whenever you pay on these websites, if they take that kind of stuff. So that's one way to keep it safe. The other way is just to not put it into the website and just not use it. Which is rather inconvenient for most people.
I was going to say, we've gone to as much as we talk about, we want you to shop local, we want you to walk into local businesses. Listen, I've seen the Amazon truck spend hours going through my neighborhood delivering, so we know that people are doing this online.
Right.
So the idea is how to make that experience as safe as possible. And when you say wallets, I know what you're talking about, but not everybody does. Talk about how easy it is to sign up for an Apple Pay or a Google Pay for somebody, and we talked about the various ages of people who may or may not be online savvy. How do they connect with something like that? How easy is it for them to use?
So typically, if you've had your cell phone in there, you've created a user ID with the various service, whether it's Apple or through Google or Android in there. And setting that up is as easy as going into that particular app and following the prompts that are there to add your card number. It verifies with your bank through their that services money service, and then it's available to use. And a lot of times when you go to use it, if you go to a website that accepts that particular payment method, it gives you that option, and you can just use that rather than typing in your debit card number or credit card number every single time.
What are a couple of other things that you can suggest for people that are fairly easy fixes that might help them stay safe with online shopping? Let's go there specifically because we know that is important. Updating things like maybe making sure your antivirus is up to date, which a lot of people may or may not do, or the use of maybe even VPNs.
Yeah, so VPNs have become much more, I'm not an IT person at all, but the use of VPNs have become much more prevalent in there, very easy to use. That way it masks your IP address, can't trace you back to, typically can't trace you back to your home computer in there. So being able to use those are important. You know, if you have credit cards, you can certainly use those. But I think using anything that you can to protect yourself, you know, especially antivirus, firewalls, that kind of stuff, sometimes they can get rather cumbersome for some people to use.
Yeah.
But being able to make sure that your information is up to date, your computer information is up to date, you know, your all of your downloads, all that kind of stuff are there, and updates to your operating system certainly should help.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're spending time with Matt Smith from First Bank Richmond talking about cybersecurity, fraud, keeping yourself safe online. Matt mentioned that you're seeing more and more this fraud, this stealing of your personal information as well as your money, and finding out ways to be safe online. Again, First Bank Richmond providing information to the community, firstbankrichmond.com/cybersecurity. Whether you are a customer of First Bank Richmond or not, that is part of their site that you can go to and find information that can help keep you safe. We've talked about the consumer, but businesses also need to think about this on their end. Talk a little bit about how you handle or what you do in terms of some of First Bank Richmond's business customers. What's the type of information that you provide to them that help keep them safe, maybe help keep them from being hacked, or help keep their customers safe?
Yeah, so when it comes to a business, a lot of businesses are still in the habit of writing checks, mailing checks. So sometimes that mail fraud can happen where they will be intercepted and then maybe sent to somewhere else. We offer, and a lot of banks offer for their business customers, is an option for positive pay, which allows the business to send a file saying this is what we're paying, and that's both for the checks that they may send out, and also for the electronic payments, the ACH payments that a lot of businesses do, to be able to say, here is what we're sending out when those come through to be paid, and something seems to not match, maybe a name doesn't match, maybe the amount doesn't match to the file that they've sent, then they can go through and they can decision those and say, no, this is not correct, this is a fraudulent check, and it can get rejected and returned as not paid. So on the financial side, there's a lot of things that they can do. Their electronic or online access can be monitored much more closely with the different logins that can be created under the particular business in there to be able to see the activity, that kind of stuff. And then what we see with businesses, sometimes there are some phishing expeditions that happen, and we're not talking about going out to the reservoir and
that's not FISHING.
Yeah, PHIS, for phishing.
And explain what phishing. People have heard that term, but may not know completely what that is.
Yeah, so in the phishing the idea of that is for them to, these bad actors, to send this information or send an email and try to get information, maybe acting as maybe an official from the company or someone higher up in the company to someone who is lower. That way they can gain access into the system. These hackers can gain access into the system, and then they can move around in that system and maybe find information that that is not otherwise publicly available in there. So some social engineering ideas with that they can get these people to provide that information. So that's the phishing idea in a nutshell for that. So they can come in and get that information, wreak havoc within the system, whether it's gaining customer information, addresses, emails, phone numbers for a data breach, or they can come in and get the financial information for the bank or for the business.
We talk about being online. A lot of people think computer, sitting at a desktop. Obviously, when we start talking about our phones and our tablets, those are also online. Are there things that we need to think about when and where we're using these?
Yeah, with cell phones, a lot of them have the capabilities now to mask your IP address as well, so almost like a VPN in there, so it'll change that. They can do that. I would never allow anybody to have access to the phone that you wouldn't otherwise give access to, whether it's somebody physically here or it's somebody that maybe wants to see your screen or share it with those video messaging apps that each carrier might have in there. So you would never want to give anybody any access to that because they may ask you to scroll through your screens, and when they see something that's interesting to them, like a banking app or any type of financial app that may be on your phone, they may ask you to stop. Oh, I think we have an issue with that. And then open it up, they can see your username, typically, maybe have you type in your password, and they're recording everything right there. So they can see everything that goes in, and then if you get into it and they're looking at it while you're sharing it, now they can maybe see how much money you might have in there, what kind of accounts you have, and they may be familiar with that particular app and direct you where to go and things for you to do. So,
is password a good password?
Never.
Listen, I'm one of those people that I tend to use the same passwords because I don't want to have to remember a password for everything.
Right.
Talk about passwords, their importance, and what people should consider when they are creating passwords.
Yeah. Obviously, you never want to use something that is
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, something that's easily guessed. And this is all information that we've all heard for so long.
But a lot of us have ignored it through the years because it gets difficult. If you have 8, 10 websites, like a lot of people, and some even more than that, you're thinking about 8, 10 different passwords, and it's hard enough to remember your phone number sometimes.
Tedious and
yes.
So some of the carriers have the option to save your passwords within, like with Apple, with Keychain. Google has their password wallet, that kind of stuff, where it can autofill for you. But using those passwords that are much more difficult to guess, that aren't that have letters, numbers, special characters, capitalization, that kind of stuff is super important. Some even generate their own passwords that are long and very difficult to remember in there. So sometimes that's where that password manager comes in, where it'll autofill it for you, so you don't have to remember all those in there. But certainly having a password that is maybe not your name and date of birth, or your street address or anything like that is super important, because those are easily found.
Do you? I mean, and you mentioned Google and some of those. Yes, we can save this password for you and move it around. But are there certain password app type of things that you think are good or are a good idea for people to use?
Anything that you can find that has that is rated and well known is certainly something that somebody can use. I can't think of any of the names off the top of my head,
right.
but anything that is more well known is typically going to be a more safe option in there.
Okay. We've gone through a number of things, and I know we probably have not even scratched the surface of what people need to be aware of, how they need to keep themselves safe. Don't put your pets' names out online. Right. I mean, there are certain things we haven't touched on that I'd like to have you back, and we can get very specific about some things again, because this, again, like I mentioned, just in friends that I've seen online that have gotten hacked, that have had their credit cards stolen, things of that nature. I think that we're seeing this a lot more. But before we go, are there one or two things that you really want our audience to think about, even whether we've mentioned it or not, or maybe I haven't asked you about it, that a couple of nuggets that you really want to leave our audience with to even help them in the coming week be safer as they do their business online?
Some of the biggest things are any unsolicited calls or messages or texts that you may get regarding your finances or any of your banking information, anything, any PayPal invoices, anything that you may get or anything that comes through in social media saying that we think you have an issue here or your computer is infected. Is all things that are red flags for scams, and the best thing to do is to not interact with those at all.
Don't ignore those messages that come up from certain businesses that say, we will never ask you for your password or that information. Think about those, look at those, remember those, and remember that when you're doing things online. There are certain things that certain companies will just never ask you for.
They'll never ask any of that stuff for you.
All right. So. Matt Smith with First Bank Richmond, we are going to have you back because this is something that people are dealing with truly on a daily basis, and whether it is their local computer or having gotten their information put out on the dark web because a business that they interacted with got hacked. We're all vulnerable right now.
Yes, we are.
All right. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching this week's In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. As always, I wish you well.